My passion is wildlife, basically, and trying to connect people with wildlife. You know, I want people to like look into a bear's eyes, well, not that close obviously, but in a painting, or you know, or in real life if it's a safe situation. Lately, like, the human race is kind of taking over the planet, and you know, just in my lifetime, half of the world's wildlife has disappeared. Half, like, that's a lot. You know, so me painting big animals that I feel people can connect with better, like has a bit more personality, and understanding how important they are in our ecosystem. And bears are great because this is Revelstoke, right? We have bears everywhere. I like painting bears, but I like painting a lot of other wildlife, and I think it just gives me more freedom than doing like a human portrait or something. And you know, it doesn't have to look exactly like that person or whatever. And I can kind of build on the character. I'm still feel like my painting style is evolving all the time, sometimes faster than other times. I'm definitely inspired by a lot of other artists. I mean, that's the beauty of social media too. Like, you can follow artists on Instagram or Facebook and belong to different groups and watch YouTube videos and all that stuff. So yeah, you get inspired and it puts different ideas in your head. Learning a lot about how the masters used to paint, like Rembrandt and some of the old Renaissance painters, where they would layer color upon color, and back then it was only oil paint, right? So, you know, depending on how much linseed oil they would use, it would create a depth with the translucent, because your eye would see the colors beneath the colors and so on. And yeah, just learning like how to place colors and overlap colors. There's really an infinite number of possibilities. You know, I've got a couple of charts where I kind of look back and go, oh yeah, that's how you mix that color, by overlapping a couple of true colors and using different mediums to create that transparency when you need it, or an opaqueness when you need it. But yeah, a lot of my paintings are layers on layers, because it's almost like sculpting. Maybe that's why I sculpt too. I don't know, it just creates that depth. I'll often start with the eyes, and I won't finish them completely. Like, I'll keep going back to them and back to them, because the eyes can never be perfect enough, right? And it's how everyone communicates, is eye contact. Sometimes you don't want to do eye contact with a bear though, but in my paintings I want you to have eye contact and I want you to connect. So yeah, the eyes are definitely like the focus of a lot of the paintings, rather than the figure. Like, I want the eyes to look really real, and then the rest can be more contemporary and loose and colorful. And that's kind of like my culture, where I came from, like back in the Czech Republic under communist rule at the time. So there weren't a lot of resources. Like, you couldn't go down to the store and to the hardware store and pick up stuff. And I don't even know if they had hardware stores back then, but people got really creative and resourceful and would build stuff out of other stuff, and, you know, to function, basically, not necessarily art, but they would get creative and make, you know, furniture out of old furniture, or, you know, putting pieces together, or building houses out of industrial waste, you know. Yeah, and I kind of grew up with that. Like, my parents were super resourceful because that's what they had when they grew up. They didn't have a lot, so. But basically, I love going out into nature, so this gets me out into nature. I love the feeling of driftwood and the stories that it has to tell me. And I'm trying to create a couple local wildlife sculptures out of the driftwood, and a lot of the time it depends on what I find. Here, this is all like just pieces I thought would make good eyeballs. You know, eyes are always the part you want to connect people with, but yeah, there's like, oh, that could be a good eyeball, little pieces like that. even a little piece of bark, you know, to like highlight it. Yeah, these are, you know, you put them together this way, whichever way, or something in the middle. Yeah, it's just fun. It's like a giant puzzle. You don't know the shapes you're gonna find and create. It's totally fun. I feel like a little kid, you know, like going to the beach camping with your family, and then you're just playing, basically. This is a heron that I'm working on, and yeah, same thing. First piece of wood I found was this here, his head, I guess, and his bill. And then I'm like, oh, that looks like a heron. What other pieces could I find to use in the sculpture of this? So yeah, I started looking for, you know, nice flat long wing pieces and something for the legs and a neck, and yeah, little pieces just to kind of get the feeling of the sculpture or the animal that I'm trying to create. Last week when I was working on this stuff, I was like, wow, like look at all these pieces of wood. Like each piece of wood has a story. And it's different than like if you're carving a sculpture out of marble or out of one single piece of wood and you're just using one medium, where this is, it's one medium, it's driftwood, but every single piece has its own story. Like every piece belonged to a tree at some time, whether it was a branch that an owl nested on, or a root wrapped around a rock, or a piece of bark. You know, and some of these pieces can be hundreds of years old, or 50, 60 years old. Driftwood is so beautiful. It's a sculpture in itself, you know, that nature has created, and I'm just kind of putting some pieces together to create my version of, you know, what could be found in this area where the driftwood is found.